أهلا بكم مشاهدينا في نبض السوق من العربية. أنا كارينا كامل.
The British government's organizing a series of investment conferences during the Games for businessmen and CEOs from around the world.
I'm here on the 14th floor of the Shard, a building that stands 95 stories high. نبدأ مع الأخبار العالمية حيث غيرت وكالة التصنيف الائتماني Moody's.
Christine Lagarde said that would be the subject of discussions over the coming weeks.
International investors cite a number of reasons why they're not ready to come back to Egypt yet. نلقي نظرة على الأسهم النشطة في سوق أبو ظبي اليوم. الدار العقارية مستقرة.
Experts say that if property developers want to keep up with the pace of demand and deliver current projects on time, they're going to have to increase their development capacity by up to 10-fold.
This property here in central London near the shopping districts of Oxford and Bond Streets on the market for £12.5 million. شكرا لحسن المتابعة.
The economic impact of the Olympics is the subject of much debate here in the UK, especially with the cost of hosting the Games exceeding £9 billion at a time of economic recession. The government says this is an historic opportunity to attract investment and boost tourism, with the Prime Minister David Cameron expecting revenues of £13 billion over 4 years. And the minister in charge of the Olympics legacy tells Al Arabiya the Games would generate at least £1 billion of investment for British business.
The Olympics is costing a lot of money, but it's very much worth it. But we know that for every pound that's spent on UKTI's activity generates £19 for British export and investment. What that will lead to, we hope, is £1 billion worth of benefit for British economy as a result of the Games time activity.
Analysts expect the Games to give GDP figures for the third quarter a small boost with the increase in visitor numbers, revenue from ticket sales, and contracts awarded to British companies providing Olympics infrastructure and services. But most experts agree any benefits will be temporary and not enough to lift the economy out of recession.
The short-term boost is potentially going to be bigger than the long-term effect. Hopefully we'll still have the effect a few years down the line. I think people are forecasting potentially an extra 0.3% on quarterly GDP. It's quite interesting to look back. If you look at Sydney in the year 2000, Athens in 2004, and the Beijing, the Chinese Olympics, they've yet to recoup, according to them anyway, the cost of those Olympics. But it does raise the interesting question, should it all be just about profit?
Some also question the high cost of staging the Games at a time of economic austerity when the government is cutting costs and trying to reduce the budget deficit. And many Londoners fear the travel disruption on the city's transport network of underground trains, buses and roads, which will make it more difficult to get to work, with some opting to work from home instead. Still, some say the Games could generate a sense of national pride, which is a positive for the economy, but can't be measured easily. The British government's organizing a series of investment conferences during the Games for businessmen and CEOs from around the world. Officials say it's a way of attracting investment to key sectors like infrastructure, energy and retail, while others see it as an attempt to justify the high price tag of the Games. And only time will tell how beneficial they've been for the British economy. Carina Kamel, Al Arabiya, London. It's a massive Arab investment towering above the British capital. At 310 meters high, the Shard is Western Europe's tallest skyscraper, and it's 95% owned by the Gulf state of Qatar. At a cost of around £1.5 billion sterling, the Shard is a vertical city with offices, luxury apartments, restaurants, a five-star hotel, and a viewing gallery with 360-degree views over London. Its Qatari owners say they're not worried about recouping their investment because they're taking the long view and are committed to London's real estate market, where they already own retailer Harrods and many other properties.
It is a long-term investment, and there is no way that I can say exactly when it's going to be recouped, my investment as an initial investment. This is part of our relationship and also our confidence about the London markets and the long relationship in the financial and also in the economic of the City of London.
The unveiling of the Shard comes at a time of increasing demand for London's high-end properties from overseas buyers, with new research from agent Savills showing that foreign buyers bought 59% of London's prime properties and 78% of new build projects.
Well, 1 in 3 of London residents are born overseas, so it's hardly surprising that over the whole prime area, sort of from Richmond in the southwest up to Islington in the northeast, we see that 34% of buyers are overseas born. The prime central area, which is the very posh bits in the middle, basically, are being bought by even more overseas buyers. And actually, if it's new build and it's over 5 million in prime central London, then it's more than 70% overseas buyers.
The Shard's developer says it will create more than 12,000 jobs for the local community. But some conservation groups were opposed to the project, saying it obstructs the view of London landmarks like St. Paul's Cathedral.
I'm here on the 14th floor of the Shard, a building that stands 95 stories high. The inauguration this week marks the completion of the physical exterior of the building. As for the official opening of the interior, that's scheduled for later this year.
Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim Al Thani, along with Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, officially inaugurated the Shard, while the British capital gave its newest and tallest residents a fitting welcome with a laser show across the London skyline. Carina Kamel, Arabiya, London. The Egyptian government welcomed the visit of IMF chief Christine Lagarde, which is aimed at expressing support for Egypt and encouraging foreign investors. The Islamist Freedom and Justice Party also appeared to welcome an IMF loan. The group had previously rejected an economic program attached to the loan presented by the military-backed transitional government.
نظرتنا كما أكد السيد الرئيس لصندوق النقد الدولي أنه ليس مؤسسة تمويل فقط وإنما كمؤسسة دولية تدعم الثقة في الاقتصاد الوطني وتشجع المؤسسات الأخرى على الاستثمار في مصر.
In her meetings with officials, Lagarde didn't go into any technical details related to the loan, but the fund will be returning to Cairo in the coming weeks to discuss the government's economic program.
حضور فريق البنك فريق IMF صندوق النقد الدولي في هذا الوقت وبهذا التشكيل الرفيع المستوى بالإضافة إلى حضوره بسرعة بيعطي رسالة إيجابية ليس فقط لمصر ولكن للعالم أجمع أن مصر استقرت.
Egypt's prime minister said the loan duration would be 5 years with a grace period of 39 months and an interest rate of 1.1%, while Lagarde indicated the conditions attached to the loan would be discussed in negotiations over the coming weeks and months.
Then they will return to Egypt to go into the details and the terms and conditions of the program, which is clearly the journey that is identified by the authorities of the country and the financing that goes with the program. Under the IMF rules, programs have to be fully financed.
All eyes remain on the conditions attached to the IMF loan. Christine Lagarde said that would be the subject of discussions over the coming weeks, while the Egyptian Prime Minister said the conditions were acceptable without elaborating or giving any details. Carina Kamel, Arabiya, Cairo.
In Egyptian film Take Care of Zuzu, Souad Hosni plays a student paying her way through college by secretly moonlighting as a belly dancer, only to fall in love with her handsome and engaged professor, played by Hussein Fahmy. The Egyptian film star was in London for a special screening of the 1971 classic. Arabiya caught up with Fahmy, who commented on the pressure some Egyptian actors are facing, with stars like Adil Imam being accused of offending Islam through their movie roles.
There is a threat, definitely, but we're not going to be threatened. We are fighting it. These are new trends that we've been hearing lately. We haven't heard this before. These very loud voices that are accusing Egyptian cinema and Egyptian artists with all sorts of accusations are not acceptable, and we're not going to accept it, and we're fighting it, and we continue fighting.
The screening of Zuzu is part of a festival of popular Arab cinema that includes oldies like Yusuf Shaheen's Alexandre Y, modern classics like the Yaqubian Building, and newer offerings from Lebanon like Busta and Stray Bullets.
What we wanted to do is to show people an authentic slice of Arab cinema, and our aim with it really is to give British audiences an entry point into a different kind of Arab cinema, one that isn't necessarily tied to the political connotations of the current socio-political condition, but one that talks about the breadth of popular culture as an artistic form.
The festival comes at a time when the Arab film industry is facing headwinds from many directions. The global economic slowdown is making funding harder to come by, and the rise of new technology like smartphones is changing the way we watch movies, with more consumers streaming videos online and less people going to the cinema. Closer to home, the industry is also facing challenges with the rise of Islamist governments and the spread of more conservative religious discourse.
Art make people scared, extremist, scared. Our challenge is to keep on existing while we scare those people who are maybe sometimes getting power.
Which is why some experts say Arab filmmakers have a responsibility and key role to play.
No, I believe we're approaching a crisis. We haven't reached the crisis just yet. And the reason for this is because I believe the time has never been more crucial for Arab filmmakers and artists and visionaries and the creative practitioners from that part of the world to actually show the real face of the Arab world and the Muslim world.
One actor taking his responsibility very seriously is Khalid Abdallah, who appeared in Hollywood films dealing with serious issues like Afghanistan and 9/11.
You are faced with a series of questions about what you are prepared to do and what you are not prepared to do as roles. There are many films which I have been offered or have asked me to audition, which I've refused on the grounds that I find them insulting or offensive or misrepresentative. On the other hand, there are films which have tackled difficult issues, 9/11, Afghanistan, Iraq, and now even, now the situation in Egypt. Those difficult issues, I believe we have a duty to really grapple with.
And Londoners who missed the Arab Cinema Festival will be able to get their next fix of Arab movies at the upcoming London Film Festival starting in October. Carina Kamel, Arabiya, London. This summer, the shopping season has come early to London. With Ramadan starting in a few weeks and the British capital hosting the Olympic Games later this month, the Ramadan rush of Arab shoppers is on.
Every year we have this Ramadan rush phenomenon, the pre-Ramadan, a huge amount of Middle East and Arabic visitors coming to London. And of course, what do they love doing when they're here? Shopping. And we love that right here in the centre of the West End. Bond Street, Oxford Street, Regent Street. We've seen huge growth year on year from our Arab and Middle Eastern visitors coming here and enjoying the best of our British brands and luxury brands from around the world.
Last year, tourists in London spent about £12 billion, and nearly 80% of that was spent by overseas visitors. That's £9.4 billion. And Arab visitors are spending more and more each year. In 2011, Saudi shoppers spent more than £170 million. That's 72% higher than the year before. And it's not just how much Arabs are spending, it's also how many of them are coming to the capital. Last year, the number of visitors from Saudi Arabia increased by 22%, while tourists from the United Arab Emirates were up by nearly 10%. And in the pre-Ramadan period, they all head to London's luxury retailers.
The key countries for us are Kuwait, UAE and Saudi. Ramadan is slightly earlier, so it's absolutely crucial, especially with the Olympics taking place this year. So we're seeing a lot of people coming in. There's been a year-on-year rise. Last year, actually, from the Saudi area, we were seeing a massive rise of about 22% year-on-year. So that's a huge increase, and actually the spend has been dramatically different as well.
فقبل رمضان ثلاث تجمع هلا أكثر يعني متوقعين كثافة من العرب بشكل مش طبيعي. سلفجز نعرفها من التاكس فري اللي هي ترتفع إلى 75% من نسبة التاكس فري اللي عم تطلع من هون هن عرب. عشان هيك فبيجوا كتير، وخاصة هلا التنزيلات شيء مش طبيعي. يعني عندك ايتمز بيكونوا من 1000 باوند تنزل لل 70 باوند.
During the summer months, London depends on Arab tourists, especially given that they spend more than visitors from other regions. For example, a Saudi shopper will spend, on average, £233 a day in London. That's nearly double what a European or American shopper would spend in London. Carina Kamel, Arabiya, London.